Hello, Miracle. Are you there? If you are, please turn on your camera and your microphone. Hi, Miracle. Is your microphone on? Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Gene. I sort of run the computer and the presentations and the Zoom meeting here at the governing board. Thanks for joining us. I just want to tell you what to expect. By the way, your camera is sideways. Thank you. Um, Thanks for joining us to read the land acknowledgement statement. Do you have a copy?
I do.
Because if you like, and we don't have to do this, but I can share in the meeting, in the Zoom meeting, this on your screen so you can read it. I think I have it. Like that. Can you see it?
Yes.
Would you like me to put that on the screen when you're reading it, or do you want to just read it from what you've got there?
Can you put it on the screen, please?
I'd be happy to. So I just wanted to thank you for being here and let you know what to expect. When the meeting begins, and it might begin a little late, there'll be a roll call, and then the next item on the agenda after roll call is you to read this statement. Before you do, the governing board president will introduce you, and please make sure to have your mic and your camera on when he does. And everybody here in the meeting will be able to see you as well. Those of us who are in person, that is. He'll maybe read your bio, ask you a couple questions, and then as soon as you're ready, as soon as he finishes, I'll put that statement on the screen so you can read it right from the screen, okay?
Okay.
And then when you're done, you're welcome to stick around and listen to the rest of the meeting. But if you do, please make sure to turn your microphone and camera off, okay?
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Thanks again for being part of this meeting. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Arden and Miracle, I just wanted to let you know the meeting will begin about 5:45. They're running a little late.
Ms. Barboa, can I get us started tonight?
Hello?
Oh,
Here.
Ms. Shaw?
Here.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Present.
Dr. Ravi?
here. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our governing board meeting. Sorry about starting a few minutes late. First of all, tenemos servicios de interpretación disponibles. Por favor, indique con la mesa aquí si necesita servicios de interpretación. Welcome again to our governing board meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 12th, and on this day in 1980, Apple made its first initial public offering on the U.S. stock market, later becoming the first company valued over $1 trillion. To those of you who invested in 1980, well, good for you. Today is also National Poinsettia Day and National Gingerbread House Day, so perfect as we get into the holiday season. Hope yours is festive. And tonight is also the sixth night of Hanukkah. To those that celebrate the Festival of Lights, happy Hanukkah, and may there be peace in the coming years. We're going to start here our meeting with our land acknowledgement statement. And we have Miracle Pettigrew, looks like on the Zoom here, who is currently a senior at Catalina High School and in the top 10 for academics. She is an outstanding athlete, having played soccer, volleyball, and a cheerleader for Catalina. Ms. Pettigrew has earned recognition as a Quanah Student of the Month, Woman of Impact from the University of Arizona, and a member of the Warrior Society through Native American Student Services. She has served her community in several capacities, including student ambassador for College Knowing and Going program, as well as the Student Service Learning Aid. She has been accepted to Grand Canyon University for the 23-24 school year. Congratulations to you. Do you know what you'll be studying there?
I'll be studying psychology.
Excellent. That's an excellent field. We need more of those definitely in our community. Hope you stay in the Tucson area. Ms. Pettigrew, the floor is yours for our land acknowledgement statement.
On behalf of the governing board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Miracle Pettigrew, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Pasquayaqui tribe.
Thank you very much for being here tonight and leading us in that statement.
Thank you.
And good luck in your college and the rest of your senior year and your college career.
Thank you so much.
All right, next we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance, and we have also on the Zoom, yes we do, Arden Kissel, who's a 10th grader at Sabino High School. Arden is a wonderful sophomore that is very involved in Sabino's theater program. Arden sets a daily example and the best parts of Sabino High School. Arden, what's the last play that you were in?
I was in, it was a collaboration with a company called Stories That Soar.
Okay.
That goes to certain elementary schools and collects stories from them and brings them to the stage.
That's an excellent program. I haven't been able to attend, but I've heard a lot of great things about it. So I'm glad you were able to participate in that. I'll ask our audience to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you, Arden, and good luck on the rest of your semester, and hope you have a great winter break. All right, Dr. Torrio, do we have any agenda adjustments for this evening?
President Shaw, there are no agenda adjustments this evening.
Okay, and the floor stays with you for superintendent's report.
Yes, members of the governing board, members of the public, welcome to our last meeting of the fall semester of the 23-24 school year and our last meeting before the holiday break that will soon be upon us. As we like to do, we want to start tonight's superintendent's report with a very special musical treat. I'd like to welcome the Pister Middle School Band. The Pister Middle School Band has found great success despite experiencing 2 years of COVID that delayed them in beginning instrumental study as elementary students. Nevertheless, resilience and perseverance, they have come to establish themselves as one of our most successful middle school bands, and resilience and perseverance define who they are as students, leaders, and musicians under the direction of their fantastic music director, Javier Aguilar. Tonight, for your listening enjoyment, they are going to be performing 3 short seasonal selections for you. First, Little Drummer Dudes, a contemporary arrangement of the popular carol which challenges the band students with accidentals, rhythms, syncopation, and style markings. Next, they'll be performing Christmas Spectacle, a classic band arrangement with familiar seasonal songs. And lastly, they'll close out their performance this evening with Santa the Barbarian. The jolly old elf from the North Pole gets an aggressive makeover in this tongue-in-cheek piece for the band. We'd also like to thank Pister Principal Catherine Gunnels for her continued support and encouragement of these wonderful and talented musicians from Pister Middle School. Pister Middle School, the floor is yours.
Yes.
I'm telling you that's really mean. You need to go.
I know.
That was a very festive start to the governing board meeting, Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, it's great to see our wonderful student performers providing such holiday cheer. And just a reminder to everybody out there in the viewing public, an investment in the arts is not just an investment in instruments or paints or watercolors or dance shoes or any other equipment. An investment in the arts is an investment in creativity, innovation, discipline, independence, critical thinking, and beauty. So all of you out there, if you're considering your next tax donations in the upcoming fiscal year, choose TUSD Visual and Performance Arts in OMA. Continuing on with the superintendent's report, I would certainly love to highlight a wonderful visit I had out to Banks Elementary. I want to thank Principal William Rosenberg for an absolutely wonderful tour and visit. I had an absolutely amazing time, met some wonderful staff members, wonderful students. I got to meet the president of Student Council, Dylan Yaki. He is a very, very talented distance runner. Him and I share the love of running. It was great to share that with a wonderfully talented young person. He consistently placed within the top 4 in cross country this past season. He even completed a race after losing his shoe and running the entire race with one foot barefoot, the other with a shoe on. Just a wonderful young man, and he does exceptionally well academically, a real student leader out there at Banks. And I got to meet a superstar staff member, one of our amazing counselors, Ashley Holt. She is a go-to, do everything, wear every single hat possible team member out there at Banks, whether she is working with students in crisis, going into classrooms and providing lessons in character development, helping out in the cafeteria with supervision, being outside on recess, or helping set up and coordinate events for the school. She is always there. She's one of the school's primary family and community liaisons, as well as emotional care providers for students. And if that's not enough, Ms. Holt also takes time out of her busy schedule to provide English as a second language classes for parents whose first language is something other than English, doing that in the late afternoons and in the evenings. And she worked recently with one of our regional social workers to start a kinship support group for grandparents and older next of kin who are raising grandchildren. And if that's not enough, she secured a sizable grant with Saguaro National Park to establish a hiking club out there at Banks. So one of the many points of passion, commitment, and brilliance in TUSD, Miss Ashley Holt, had an opportunity to award Miss Holt and Dylan basketball tickets to go see the U of A. So they were just excited beyond words to be able to go see their favorite basketball team. So I invite anybody that has not been out there to Banks. It is in the beautiful southwestern sector of our district. Had an absolutely wonderful time out there. I want to thank the team from Mary Meredith, Judy Mitchell, principal, for bringing some students from Mary Meredith out to 1010, surprising us, I believe a week ago on Friday, in honor of Special Education Day internally, Exceptional Education Day. Elementary and middle school students from Mary Meredith treated staff at the Morrow Educational Center, more commonly known as 1010, to a drumming performance. It was a wonderful surprise hearing this in my office and stepping outside and being surprised with the students from Mary Meredith. And they were also making coffee and treats available to all of the employees of 1010. The music program was piloted at Mary Meredith last year, and now the students are hooked. It's a regular part of their day. The school was able to expand their musical instruments to include drums, keyboards, and this year, horns. The students had their first performance last spring, and most recently they performed at the University of Arizona for Dia de los Muertos. Principal Mitchell and the Mustangs would like to invite all of our community to Mary Meredith's Winter Music Festival on December 15th at 1:30 p.m. That's this week. So coming up on Friday, 1:30 p.m., Mary Meredith's Winter Music Festival. Those of you in the viewing public, you want to stop by and experience the magic of music at Mary Meredith, all are invited. Next up, I'm very proud to represent the Tucson Unified School District as an honorary commander, part of a program established by base leadership out at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, whose goal is to gather civic leaders, community leaders, educational leaders, and to appoint them as honorary commanders so they can strengthen relationships out in the community. In my particular role, strengthening relationships between the base leadership and the airmen of Davis-Monthan and their families and the school district itself. It is a wonderful program where we get to know the experiences of our airmen and their families, what their educational experiences are like on base, and also what their daily schedules are like in a variety of jobs and functions and roles and responsibilities that they carry forward out at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. And our first official event was an overnight trip to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, just outside of Las Vegas. No, Las Vegas was not on the itinerary. We spent our entire time very, very busy touring Nellis Air Force Base, meeting several airmen and their families, hearing them talk about their educational experiences out there at Nellis, and hearing what their experiences are. We also received a lot of educational sessions, informational sessions on the mission of Nellis Air Force Base, as well as Davis-Monthan, the various opportunities that exist for career paths for students that are considering the United States Air Force. I do want to thank Colonel Scott C. Mills. He is the commander of Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, number one, for making this program possible, but then also for putting this event together. One of the highlights, I think two of the highlights of my trip were being able to ride on a C-130 military transport, which is what they took all of us out from Davis-Monthan to Nellis Air Force Base. And then they surprised us by actually opening up the cargo door and allowing each one of us to sit and look over the beautiful desert as we crossed it on the way into Nevada. So there I am, scared, but nonetheless harnessed in, looking out several thousand feet in the air. I also had the opportunity to realize a childhood dream and actually meet some of the Thunderbird pilots, the world famous Thunderbirds, along with the Blue Angels. They're one of the most famous demonstration flight teams that we have here in the United States. Got to see the planes up close, got to go to the Thunderbird Museum. So it was an absolutely wonderful experience, and also got to share the experience with a lot of local civic leaders, small business owners, representatives from County Supervisor Rex Scott's office, City Manager Mike Ortega, a lot of independent business owners and civic leaders, also from the University of Arizona, were with us on this trip, which enhanced our understanding of the Air Force experience. And our goal, of course, is to enhance the airmen's understanding of the community and what we have to offer. And lastly, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base Commander Colonel Scott C. Mills could not have been more complimentary about the teachers and the staff of Borman Elementary. Borman Elementary, of course, is our elementary school that operates on Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, routinely receives compliments for the accessibility of our teachers and our staff with our students, which of course the majority of Borman's student body, they are children and students of currently serving airmen and women there on Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. So we certainly look forward to this partnership and more wonderful events. We've got some appreciation days coming up here in January. In advance of National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day on January 9th, I want to thank all of our current or former law enforcement officers that actually now serve with us in school safety. Pretty much all of them have a law enforcement background and now answer the call to protect our students and employees on a daily basis. But our partners, of course, in TPD and the Sheriff's Department and all of our local law enforcement serving at the local, state, and national level, we know that they've chosen a profession that requires service and commitment and an exposure to danger and unpredictability. We thank them for answering that call to public service. We know that sometimes the job is long and not enough thank yous. So National Law Enforcement Day, which occurs on January 9th, 2024, gives us an opportunity to say thank you to all of those that serve in a law enforcement role, particularly here with our own school safety team that continues to serve that role here for the students, families, and community of TUSD. And for the 5 governing board members, surprise, surprise, January 24th is National School Board Appreciation Month. Do you know that a school board member, shock, makes $0.0 for the work that they do on behalf of the almost 40,000 students and families that we have in the district? But their work is a driving force behind the success of the school district. The support of a board ensures that students receive the highest quality education and they're prepared for the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead while acting as the public's fiduciary agents and making sure that there is transparency and fidelity with the infusion of taxpayer dollars that they are charged with managing. And here in TUSD, that is a large task. School boards also advocate for equitable and exceptional resources for all of their district students and funding that empowers schools to provide the necessary tools, technology, and access to resources to make the learning experience exceptional for every single student. We celebrate National School Board Appreciation Month. I want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude and my thank you to the 5 of you for answering this call to service, which takes you away from your families, your jobs, your kids. It's a tremendous amount of time. Not every issue is easy, and you handle it with grace, dignity, and civility, which I thank you for answering this call. And we hope that all of you join me in thanking our school board for their service in advance of January, which is National School Board Appreciation Month. And that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. And with that said, I think the month of January is the whole holiday, the whole month is to honor school boards, right? A whole month. All right. Get back to our agenda here, excuse me. All right, now I get to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, our board clerk Romero, for a call to the audience.
All right, public participation at board meetings. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience. The governing board clerk shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and maintaining order where it may be appropriate. Those who speak in person or want to have their comments read shall email or call the board office or complete a request to address the board form before the meeting. Speakers who have not completed a request form are not permitted to address the board. The speakers must state their full name and topic prior to addressing the board. Speakers are encouraged to be brief for the maximum time of 3 minutes. While more than one speaker may speak together in the time allowed, speakers are reminded that they are not allowed to speak more than once, and they may not transfer or delegate their time to others. If there are documents for the board, please give them to our board office staff, and they will ensure each board member receives a copy. Those attending the meeting and or speaking before the board shall observe rules of good conduct. Speakers should also refrain from inappropriate or slanderous remarks, and because TUSD serves students from preschool through high school, speakers should be aware that there may be children present and listening. At the end of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if any board member wishes to respond to criticism, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. No more than 2 members may address each topic. Contents of this card are public information. First up, we have Anthony Delgado, followed up by Angelina Delgado.
Good evening, Governing Board, and thank you for your time to share this information with you. My name is Anthony Delgado, and I am currently the CTE construction teacher at Choya High School, and I've been the program leader for the last 2.5 years, but I am the 5th teacher in 5 years. As an industry professional and licensed contractor, my goal when applying in the summer of 2021 was to share the gifts God has given me with the next generation of construction workers. I'm asking the governing board to investigate my termination thoroughly without prejudice and recognize that someone or something is systematically forcing teachers and employment personnel out of their jobs with impunity. They are accomplishing this through fear, through policy, through distorted information to law enforcement. And I am here to express that this district has fallen under the judgment of the Lord God Almighty. What has brought me here today was a disciplinary incident between my son and I, who is his student at Choya High School. By exercising my God-given irrefutable right to discipline my son with reasonable force in private, whether I am a teacher or his father, is what the law says. Minutes after this incident, I took full responsibility with my evaluator and assistant principal, Tariq Rasul, and again with assistant principal, Sharon Ingram, who eventually called Tucson Police Department and DES. DES cleared me in 2 investigations with no child abuse findings. I was placed on administrative leave per district policy and eventually agreed to serving a 3-day suspension, finalizing a signed agreement with Tucson Unified Assistant Superintendent Lambert and the principal and assistant principals of Choya High School. 2 months later, after the incident, I was offered my 3rd-year teaching contract and finished 2022-23 school year and began the 23-24 school year in the classroom. In August of 2023, shortly after Choya High School Assistant Principal Sharon Ingram was subpoenaed to testify, I was charged with 4 counts of domestic violence against my son. And after 11 months of misinformation and lies, I went to trial for these charges and I was found not guilty on all 4 counts of the law. Glory to God and his son, Jesus Christ, for saving me. Politics and power came into play instead of dialogue and resolution. TUSD decided 4 days after our victory in court last week that they were using the state law of not reporting the crime of child abuse to a supervisor as the catalyst for my termination. This dismissal could have happened in August, and I consider this more workplace hostility by TUSD, site leadership, and the CTE management. Your inquiry into this case will help you recognize the retaliation, fear tactics, silent intimidation, and covert workplace harassment. Today, I'm asking the governing board and TUSD to investigate why teachers are leaving, being asked to resign, or even fired, reminding you all that it takes courageous people and God's wisdom to accomplish such a task. If my people, thank you, I appreciate it.
Angelina Delgado, followed up by Stephen Spice.
Good evening, Governing Board. I am Angelina Delgado, wife of Anthony Delgado and parent of student at Choya High School. The purpose of me speaking is regarding Mr. Delgado's employment dismissal. You are here today to talk about what Mr. Delgado did not do and how that would potentially cost him his job career. I am here today to talk about what Mr. Delgado did do. What he did do was try to notify his superior and evaluator, Tariq Rasul, who after February 1st, 2023, did not contact Mr. Delgado again after several attempts by Mr. Delgado to contact him to discuss protocols, procedures, and district steps. Emails and phone records will testify to this. What he did do was notify his union representative of pending charges. What he did do was notify his CTE trainer mentor of pending charges. What he did do was notify his mentor from the TUSD mentor training program of the pending charges. This information was not a secret. The district was aware and they placed him on administrative leave in August of 2023. The district followed his case and praise our God Almighty, Mr. Delgado was acquitted of these overreached, absurd charges. Now the district wants to dismiss a teacher who cares for the students and their future and the future of this program, all while on administrative leave going to campus twice a week to pick up and drop off students' notebooks for grading, submitted weekly lesson plans, spoke with substitute teachers, talked with students and parents during this time, and even met with students on campus to get them set up with OSHA. It has been disheartening news to learn of the many students dropping the construction course and failing consequently for not having their teacher present. You are dismissing an invaluable teacher. This is not an open and shut case. There were many due processes mishandled. I urge you to do your due diligence as you occupy your seats on the board and look into the 2 grievances that were filed by Mr. Delgado. And with all this information given to you tonight, I hope you come to your own conclusions. My question is this, governing board: when is anybody going to take any kind of accountability other than Mr. Delgado? I pray every day for change, that the people in leadership lead by example with the courage to speak out against unrighteousness and stop living in fear. Thank you for your time.
Stephen Spees, followed by Kristen Cummins.
Hello, my name is Stephen Spees. I asked Anthony if I'd come up here and talk in his behalf and about him on the situation. I did send a letter earlier today, which is about a full page. I'm not used of talking for 3 minutes. I normally talk for 50 minutes or an hour and a half, so I'm not too sure how long this is going to take. I've been in the education field for 17 years, taught college and high school together. I met Anthony about 2 years ago. He's a new construction teacher, and he's the 4th construction teacher that I've met there on site. Anthony is my colleague. He and I change lives in what we do in our classrooms. Our classroom's about 50 yards away. I look at his door, he looks at my door. We are truly colleagues. I go to his classroom multiple times during the day, during the breaks, to wash my hands. I got to think about washing my hands from the COVID. And so I see him interacting with his students interacting with him, and it's a sight to see. And that's was just wonderful. He's also, I also see him 5 times a day for professional development. We have a small group which I'm in charge of for 4 times a week, and we have a big group that we meet for PDs. So I see him a lot. And in my opinion, I think Anthony Delgado is the top 10% of our teachers that are on my site. I think he's just fantastic. When I first met Anthony as an older teacher there, I told him, I said, Anthony, you got to get involved. And boy, he got involved. He got involved in clubs. He got involved in sports. He and I went to numerous football games together, sat down. We went to basketball games, sat down together. We went to baseball games together. And we also went to softball games together. Even not even our school was playing. He has volunteered, and he's just a great guy to be around. After school, you see Anthony in the baseball team, which Anthony played track and baseball for a college. And so after school, you see the baseball team in his classroom talking about Anthony's love, which is baseball. And so again, it's just a great sight to see Anthony doing that kind of stuff. I wish I had more time. I wish we had some parents here to talk, because they would echo my comments about Anthony Delgado. I miss my colleague, and more importantly, his students miss him as a teacher. I walk into there washing my hands, and they say, "Mister, what's going on with Mr. Delgado?" I said, he's going to come back. He's going to come back, and he really misses you too. And every time I go in there, even today, they're asking me, like, what's going on with Mr. Delgado? When's he coming back? I mean, they really miss him. And I still wash my hands in his classroom there. It's just not as clean as it was when he was there. So thank you for your ears and your patience with me, and hope everything works well.
Kristen Cummins, followed by Pilar Reese.
Dr. Trujillo, President Shaw, Clerk Romero, and members of the board. My name is Kirsten Cummins, and I'm a staff member in TUSD. I'm here to speak to you regarding Agenda Item 6.4 on behalf of the disabled community. Policy BEDH in its current form does not provide access to members of a measurable portion of this community, a community which was served by being able to write in. I know the purpose behind the following 2 sentences. Recognized speakers may not transfer or delegate their time to others. If a speaker is not present in the meeting room at the time they are recognized, the speaker may forfeit their opportunity to speak. Many of us are tired of the tedious form letter style bombardment of addresses school boards across the country have been receiving. However, there are community members for whom speech itself is a barrier. We already know the deaf community and try to make accommodations for them. I give you also the nonverbal of the autistic community. I myself was nonverbal as a small child. I was not just pre-verbal, as most babies going through normal development. I was not progressing normally and was non-verbal. And then one day I started singing and could only communicate through song. Finally, after a total of 2 or so years, I learned to utter words without adding notes. I can assure you, though, that during those first 2+ years, I was able to communicate my needs. And any parent can attest to their young child figuring out to some degree how to communicate non-verbally, whether they ever gain speech or not. I did gain speech, though I still struggle with interpersonal communication. There are many people who never do gain speech or who struggle with speech impediments. They communicate through signing, through writing, through assistive devices, and so much more. There are those for whom being in a large group of people is the actual barrier. Or perhaps they can be in the room literally standing up for themselves, but unable to read the words they carefully crafted and need an advocate to take over. You can see why I took note of the above-mentioned sentences. For these and other reasons, I ask that you make provisions for accessibility by allowing at least some written comments to be read during call to the audience. Thank you.
Laura Ruiz, followed by Jim Brand.
Good evening. Kudos to the people who've already spoke, and it's very sad that at least the feeling, if not the truth, of retaliation and lack of protocol is still happening in TUSD. So, God bless you. Okay, so I again like to encourage you to keep the option for people to be able to read their comments to call to the audience. Here are some of the reasons why, although she eloquently explained most of it. At the last meeting, one of the regional superintendents was named in one of the things that was read. That name came up again today. So there are times when people are not comfortable calling out their superiors, and they should have a way to do that. Calling in or being here can be intimidating. It can be scary. Having somebody else read it for you works for a lot of people. Some people may be at their job. Some people may not have a babysitter. Some people may not have a car. Some people may not have English as their first language. But the most important is that there are some people that, due to their disabilities, may not have a voice. And call to the audience is one of the vehicles for you to hear what the public has to say. And so if you change the call to the audience, then you're putting up another roadblock for the community to be able to communicate with you. Be it complaints, be it compliments, whatever it is, don't impede that process, please. Secondly, I'd like to speak to the, I had so much. Thank you, Ms. Ekstrom, for speaking for the girls last time. That dress code, I have a whole thing written, but what I want to say is that this is 2023. If you're going to listen to the students, you need to listen to the students when you disagree with the students. And most girls nowadays are okay showing their belly button or their crop top. And if they're not, they don't have to wear it. But it's not okay for us to continue to send a subliminal message to girls that it's their fault if a boy can't pay attention. It's like a more subtle way of sending the message that it's a woman or a girl's fault when they get sexually assaulted. It is not. It is not a girl's fault for anything that happens to her based on what she looks like or what she wears. And it's just time for that to change. And if you don't agree with that, don't send your child to school that way. But it's not okay for us to tell all the other parents how to dress their kids. And then lastly, the BAC is on your agenda for 6.3. I think you need to table that until the public is made aware for longer than however long that was, that there's openings in an effort of transparency. Thank you.
Jim Bryan and Kenneth Richings. Jim Byrne, sorry.
It's all good. I was ordering catering for our membership meeting tomorrow, and I just said, yeah, it doesn't look like how it should sound. So it's all good. Thanks. Superintendent Trujillo, board members, thank you for the time tonight. I want to echo the comments of Anthony Delgado, Mrs. Delgado, and Major Stephen Spees from Choya High School. As the new TEA president, I've had both the pleasure and challenge to work on the case of Mr. Delgado over the last 11 months. So there's some learnings that come with a new position and a new role. And one of them is to make clear a number of state statutes, policies, et cetera, that far too often educators within TUSD are not readily aware of. So it falls on us to educate educators and do union advocacy that way. Because the gray area and communications that did or did not transpire over the last 11 months, unfortunately see a very good educator on his way out. I'm going to read former TEA governing board member, board of director Jana Gam, who is and was the mentor teacher over Mr. Delgado. My name is Jana Gam, and I'm an educator in Arizona with nearly 15 years experience, first as a secondary ELA teacher, and for the past 3 years as a new mentor with TUSD. New mentor teachers are assigned to teachers that are in their first and second years of full-time certified teaching and working with them for the entirety of their first 2 years, conducting weekly one-on-one meetings, observing the teaching and learning process via classroom observations, and leading vital professional development classes and workshops. In the fall of 2021, I met Anthony Delgado. He was assigned to me as a new teacher at Choya High School. Our initial meeting took place over Zoom, and I was immediately impressed with how open, curious, and engaging he was, both with me and with other staff, including his co-teacher. In the first year of working with him, I observed how quick he was to try to adapt new strategies based on my and others' suggestions, as well as his natural talents and ability to engage students in the learning process. He did this through hands-on work, building sheds with students, while also using data-driven strategies to push students to succeed in an academically rigorous OSHA certification process, all while holding his students and himself to high personal and professional standards. He went above and beyond his dedication and drive to rebuilding the CTE construction program from one that had largely been neglected in years past to one that was recognized both at the campus and community levels. He showed immense drive, determination, and care for his students in the program by consistently advocating for the needs of program at campus and district levels until he got the much needed supplies, attention, priority that had been lacking with previous construction teachers in that position. It is my hope that Anthony will remain a part of TUSD and Choya community for years to come. The program he's worked so hard to build and the opportunities it provides for the students and parents of the community is vital and will have generations of positive impact by helping students and parents to see and explore the opportunities for viable career paths after graduation. The work he does provides students with essential first steps on the career ladder through OSHA and other certification process. This work provides real opportunities and enriches us all far beyond the classroom. In my time working with him as a master teacher, I saw a master teacher in the making. Thank you for your time.
Kenneth Richings, followed by Pendleton Spicer.
Hello again. My name is Ken Richings. Good to see you guys again. I'm here to talk about 6.4, the written comments. I would like to see written comments remain as an option. The first reason would be the reason that Ms. Cummins spoke about. I think first and foremost, we don't want to disenfranchise and not include people who literally don't have the ability to talk. There might also be people who temporarily are not able to attend or even to call in. And there's many reasons to keep the written comments far down the list. If there were some hierarchy of people who might be disenfranchised, would be someone like myself, a new parent And anyone who's been a parent before, and I know you're a new parent relatively, Mr. Trujillo, I don't know how you do it. It's the first time I've had a kid, and tonight is a rare night out, and it's kind of like a break, as you can understand. But I'm here for 6.4. So I'm glad somebody else already spoke to the really big important reason to keep the written comments. And as you know, I have thanked you for your work, and you make $0.00, which I commend you all for donating a lot of your time. As you know, I don't always agree with what the board has done, but as you might not know, I have praised the board on the radio and with news reporter. But the reason I'm here is because I was shocked that this might actually be happening, that you might be removing the option for written comments. And two other things really quickly. Thank you for the discussion on dress code, especially Ms. Ekstrom, Ms. Shaw. I have been watching all the meetings that have been going on in my absence the last few months. And I hope you can continue that conversation. And I did not know about the budget committee until this evening. And I would like to reiterate what Ms. Reese already said and to table the appointment of the people on the committee until the public has had more time or any time to have any kind of comment or input or to hear about it. And then while I'm here, the other thing, Ms. Shaw and anybody, just want to remind you, I'm interested in being on that alternative education committee, if that's even happening. Hopefully we can develop get enough people to get on that board. And I just want to thank you for the civility that always takes place, or almost always, that usually takes place, 99% of the time takes place in this room. It's not easy, especially with the board that has collectively so little experience. I was just saying to somebody the other day, I think collectively you have about like 12 years of experience. Sometimes in groups of people, they talk about the collective hundreds of years of experience, but most of you are fairly new to this job, and I want to commend you once again. Thank you.
Pendleton Spicer.
Good evening, board and Superintendent Trujillo. This is my first time talking, and so I might be a little bit nervous. I have several things that I wanted to say, and one is I hope that you will not vote to keep people from being part of this process of the public. There is a substantial number of people, I would imagine, that need to be able to write their comments and have them read for various reasons, which have already been stated very clearly and very well by previous speakers. So I would just like to ride on their coattails and say, please think carefully about that. Also, Ms. Shaw, I am interested in, and I think I've told you that I want to be on the alternate committee, alternate education board, and would love to have some input on that, and would like to hear from you at some point when that gets together. And I would also like to, I can't read my notes here, ask you to not, for the budget committee, I can't remember the name of it now, to not vote for that and open that back up so that people can have more notice to be on that board. The last thing that I would like to say is that I thought that the Pister brand was wonderful. I think that music and all the arts belong in schools, and I would encourage you to make every effort to keep the arts in schools. I was in music, and when I was the age of these kids, I played first chair clarinet, and it has led to many things. The arts and music for me leads to open minds, critical thinking, and so many other things that assist these kids in schools. And it has given me the opportunity to be a musician now, and having a means other than Social Security to create money for myself. So it can lead to some surprising and wonderful things. So I really encourage you to keep the arts in the schools. Thank you very much.
And Yolanda, we have one to be read, please.
Good evening to all in TUSD. My name is Guadalupe Henninger. I would like to speak about the item 6.4. The board will be discussing the potential continuation or elimination of written comments read aloud during the call to the audience. I am shocked to hear that the motion made by Val Romero to add a hotline was supposed expand public participation, not limiting by a vote to get rid of written comments read aloud. I urge the board to keep the written on option. People should have more options, no less. Beside the reason we adopted written participation are still valid. It's important to hear every person's opinion, even if they cannot make it. There are many reasons like immune compromise, crazy work hours, babysitting or taking care of aging parents, and so many reasons that prevent people from attending, preventing them from having a written option. We need more transparency, no less. Sincerely, Guadalupe Henninger.
And this concludes our call to the audience.
Well, thank you, Clerk Romero. And this is an opportunity for board members to respond to criticism or ask something to be put on a future agenda. I will add one thing in terms of some of the comments. The Budget Advisory Committee, we're not appointing anybody tonight. It's just accepting resignations and announcing the opening. So we're not appointing anybody tonight in the Budget Advisory Committee agenda item. And Mr. Richings, congratulations on your new baby, and welcome to fatherhood. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Dr. Shaw, and thank you to everyone who spoke tonight. I will echo congratulations to Mr. Richings, and also to those who have expressed interest in the Alternative Education Committee. Yeah, we're just waiting on hopefully 3 more people to sign up. So if you're interested in serving on that committee, you can go to our website and there's an application. If you just Google like TUSD board committees, it will bring you to the link. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you. And good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. I just wanted to echo Dr. Shaw. I am the board liaison for the Budget Advisory Committee, so that will be coming out soon in terms of how to apply. So please keep an eye out for that. You can contact me directly if you're interested, and I can help you get that process going in terms of what to do. So please feel free to email me at my TUSD1.org address. And Mr. Richings, again, congratulations. I'm on year almost 16, so you've got a ways to go.
All right, concluding call to the audience. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. And then we move on to items, or to the consent agenda. Dr. Trujillo.
Members of the governing board, I would like to present for your consideration the consent agenda as arranged, items 5.2 through item 5.18 for consideration of approval.
Thank you, Dr. Trio. Before I ask for any items to be removed from consent, is there anything that people want clarification on or questions to be answered on any items? Mr. Romero.
I just wanted to find out on some of the curriculum, if there's any reviews for, I guess it was 5.3, 5.4, 5.55, 5.6, and 5.7. I didn't see any.
You mean your comments or?
Comments from the public comments. Because I didn't see any on our thing, so I just didn't know if that meant there were none.
Yes, we did not receive any comments for these particular materials, though we would welcome our Senior Director for Curricular Development, Heidi Aranda, to expand. I may be wrong, but such comments would have been posted as part of the agenda materials. Ms. Aranda?
Good evening, Governing Board. That is correct. We did not receive any comments on any of the materials up for review.
That was it. Thank you.
All right. Any items to be pulled from our consent agenda tonight?
Talk about one more.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Before we do that, there's one more item. There's a question about
5.18. again, goes into our extracurricular tax credit activity. And from this last one, I want to celebrate Blendman. They were using some of their tax credit money for their after-school program. They spent over $3,000. They spent $4,000 in their Blendman reading program, and they spent $34,000 of their undesignated funds as well. And wanted just to say thank you to Principal Mack and the Blendman community. They're doing great things for their students, and I just hope that other schools look at their budgets or their tax credits and use it towards benefiting our students at their schools. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Romero. Anything else, Ms. Shaw?
Thank you. I'm wondering if we could vote separately on item 5.14.
All right, so you're going to pull 5.14?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other items to be pulled? All right, so before us we have consent agenda items 5.2 to 5.13 and items 5.15 through 5.18. I'll make a motion to approve those items. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Item passes 5-0. And then we have item 5.14. Dr. Trujillo.
President Shaw, members of the governing board, I'd like to turn it over to our general counsel for item 5.14.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, and good evening, governing board members. President Shaw, I just want some clarification on what it is the board is looking for on this item. I can go through the statement of charges or answer any questions for you.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I just wanted to vote separately on this item. No clarification needed.
Okay. All right. Would you like to move the item, Ms. Shaw? And call for a roll call vote on this one, or what do you prefer?
Whichever you prefer, roll call. It's fine with me. But yeah, I would not like to move it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm not interested in moving the item specifically.
All right, so I'll move the item.
I'll second.
All right, item is moved and seconded by Ms. Ekstrom. Any further comments or discussion on this item or questions or anything on this one? Mr. Romero.
Would it be in our best interest to get legal on this a little bit more? As far as the policy that we have within the district and the state?
As you have the right to ask for that as a governing board member about to vote on this item.
Could you go over that with us, Mr. Ross?
Certainly, I'll start at a high level. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Okay, so there's a board policy at play here, and then there's state law. So the state law states that any employee of a school district must immediately report to their supervisor if they've been charged with certain crimes. One of those crimes is child abuse. The board also has a policy that meshes with that statute that says that report must be made within 24 hours. So, and if an employee does not do that, the statute says that employee shall be immediately terminated. So it's not discretionary in the statute. It is a mandate. Basically the facts here are that Mr. Delgado was notified that he was charged with child abuse as one of the crimes he was charged with either the 1st or 2nd of February of 2023. It did not report to his supervisor. The only way the supervisor knew, as Mr. Delgado stated, was when an assistant principal was subpoenaed to appear in court over 6 months later. So since there was not an immediate report to a supervisor, the statute is in operation, and that is what's before the board tonight. Happy to answer any more specific questions.
Ms. Luna Rose,
Yes.
a question.
Mr. Ross, so when you're saying statutes, are you referring to ARS 15-550?
15-550.
Okay.
So, Mr. Ross, so when we have board policy as a governing board, that's governing board policy, and we can always vote to supersede policy, individual cases, or change board policy. But when there's state law, that's not something that we have the privilege to be able to do.
That's correct. Unless the statute gives the board some flexibility, state statute will override any district or board policy considerations or decisions. State statute's going to control.
And that comes up often when we have student disciplinary issues. We talk about what state statute allows as far as the governing board to do. They make a recommendation or an expectation, but there is some leeway on certain things with student discipline. But this state statute, per your legal reading, does not give that same leeway.
There's no off-ramp. There's no discretion written into this statute.
Ms. Luna Rose.
So there's no chance for any sort of appeal?
Actually, the statute even goes so far as to say that unlike other dismissals of certified teachers, there is no right to a hearing for this type of dismissal. So it is kind of standing on its own as a mandated termination, not even a hearing.
Dr. Shaw.
Ms. Shaw, go ahead.
Thank you. We've heard at the call to the audience that Mr. Delgado stated that he had made an effort to report this to an administrator. Did you see any evidence about this occurring?
No, in fact, due process was raised a couple of times, and I want to address that. So when the incident occurred, Mr. Delgado was given an opportunity to explain his conduct. He did not. He declined to do so, so that's back in February. And then when it comes time for the allegation of failure to report in August, he's again given an opportunity to say his state of why this, his explanation as to why he didn't report or whether he did. He again declined to provide a response. So with that, we have the administration of the school saying they were not given a report, any of his supervisors there, that he had been charged back in February. So the supervisor, Mr. Rasul, did not receive a report from him. There was no evidence that they provided to me or that he provided through his counsel that showed that he did make that report.
Thank you. And Mr. Ross, can you talk about how employees are notified of this statute to report?
So all employees are charged with understanding their obligations under the statute, particularly certified employees. There's also orientation that has a list of policies that at the beginning that employees are provided. You should take a look at these. In the new employee orientation, that's something that I personally have gone over with new teachers if folks attend that. But again, this is a statute. It's not, could we always do more to inform people of all of their obligations under statutes and policies? Of course, we'd probably spend a lot of time doing that, but this is one that's a statute that everyone's charged with understanding.
And the statute doesn't have any language about a pending allegation or something that eventually is exonerated?
It does not. It's a standalone, independent of the underlying charge that's not reported. So being acquitted, having a case dropped, does not give an excuse for failing to report that someone was arrested or charged.
If I may continue. And the school site has no responsibility to follow up and find out what's happening with a charge before letting that said employee back on campus.
So I guess no. Under the statute, it's the employee's responsibility to make a report. Once that happens, then the school does have an obligation to follow up on what's happening with those charges. In this particular case, the school was actually informed back in February that there would not be charges, so there was nothing to follow up on. The only time they found out there were charges was 6 months later when an administrator was subpoenaed to trial. So there was nothing to follow up on the charges. The school did follow up on employee discipline, as Mr. Delgado mentioned.
Thank you.
Mr. Romero?
So obviously, Mr. Ross, hearing we have good quality teachers, especially like in CTE, where, in construction, they're very, very important that they were needing, but kind of put in a hard spot with the state statute, from what I'm understanding. Now, just if there is a dismissal on this, does this blacken his, I guess, does it anyway blacken his reputation?
Well, dismissal would be reported to the state board in terms of certification. So the state board is going to know. Whether the state board takes any action on certificate is up to them. And under board policy, if someone is dismissed for cause, then they are normally not eligible for rehire into Tucson Unified, but that doesn't speak to any other school districts.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so it seems no further questions. We have a motion and a second to adopt the statement of charges and notice of dismissal. Ms. Borrell, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw?
Sorry. Can I pass?
Ms. Ekstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Yes.
Dr. Ravi?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Okay, item passes 5-0. All right, thank you for that discussion. Thank you for the legal advice. All right, I'm going to move us on to item 6.1, approval of TUSD annual expenditure budget revision for fiscal year 24. Dr. Trujillo.
President Shaw, members of the governing board, I'd like to welcome our chief financial officer to provide the winter budget revision. Per statute, we're responsible for reporting any modifications to our budget. We have two opportunities annually, once in the winter and then again later on in the spring. And so here is Mr. Hernandez.
Good evening, board members. As Dr. Trujillo mentioned, this is our winter revision to the annual expenditure budget for fiscal year 24. So this allows us to essentially true up different elements that I'll go through during the presentation so that we can make sure that we either capture sufficient capacity that is still not in there, or we essentially remove capacity that we overestimated on. So I will go through those figures with you. I'll go over a timeline, some of the changes to our average daily membership, some of the impacts of that ADM to our budget limits, what's on the horizon, and then I'll take any questions from you. So this is the timeline that you've seen previously. We've gone through a proposed budget, which you approved on June 13th, an adopted budget that you approved on July 11th, the AFR, which you approved on September 16th, and we're here today for the budget revision. The deadline for that is December 15th, so we are here ahead of schedule. May 15th is the last day to do our second revision, and if and when we need to do that, we will set that up with you in the spring. So this is a lot. There's a lot of data right here for you, but I wanted to be as comprehensive as possible related to our average daily membership. As you know, the 40th day ADM, which landed at the end of September, provides us a preliminary view year over year of our enrollment changes from one year to the next. It tends to be the basis for which we provide allocations to our individual schools for their upcoming budget year. But the district is ultimately funded on the 100th day current year enrollment. This year, the 100th day of school is going to fall on January 23rd of 2024. So the columns in the light blue to the far left just show you what the movement was from one 40th day to another 40th day. So you can see Group A, which is just the count of all our overall student population. From an average daily membership standpoint, this is an actual enrollment. This is limited based on the calculations that the state provides and what we ultimately use to calculate funding for the school district. In fiscal year 23, we had just about 38,805 805 ADM out of all our grades. On the 40th day of this year, we had just over 37,709. That is a decline of over 1,000 ADM. Every ADM is worth, valued at about $4,900. So that is in the ballpark of $5 million in losses, and I will show you what that looks like from a dollars and cents perspective. We also had a decline in our various Group B weights. These are our groups of students who have different types of needs, whether they are English language learners, students in exceptional education courses, our free and reduced lunch count, and there were declines in all of those except for English language learners. So from one year to the next, we lost about another 7,000 in ADM Group B weighted average for those classifications. So from 1/40th day to the next, year over year, that amounts to just under $6 million in loss of budget capacity. When we look at, because we're looking at the 100th day as ultimately what we're going to be funded on, when you look at where we adopted a budget and where our projected enrollment is as of today, or as of the date that I ran this presentation, we're looking at more of a loss of $5.2 million. We've obviously been able to clean up a lot of data. We've been able to reconcile a lot of pieces in order to true up a lot of these. But ultimately, it's still a loss of over $5 million in our M&O budget, and specifically as it relates to the loss of ADM. Now, the year-over-year change by grade, definitely kind of gives us a sense of where we need to start targeting a lot of our attendance and enrollment concerns. So kindergarten, the rows highlighted in yellow are the top 5 grades with the greatest losses year over year in student ADM. Kindergartners, 6%, third graders, 6.7%, sixth graders, 5.5%, eighth graders at 10.3%, and 12th graders, seniors in high school, at 5.5%. There are certainly different stories that are people who are smarter than I am about running these numbers could tell you, but certainly it highlights a lot of issues, particularly in the loss of seniors, in the loss of high school students. That is something that is not very common. It is something that we do not normally see is students essentially leaving in their final year with TUSD. We obviously had a large decline in populations of special needs students, essentially under Group B. You can see that the largest decline was in those students who have a category need of specific learning disabled. We lost almost 60% ADM from one year to the next. There are a variety of categories in these. I will mention that some of these categories are eligible for the Empowerment Scholarship accounts that are now available to all students in Arizona. So some of these could certainly be attributed to the fact that some of these students are not eligible for ESAs, and then they can go off to a different learning environment that their families believe is more suited to them, and essentially take those dollars with them. We don't know that for a fact until ADE is able to provide us additional specific information down to the student level. We can only assume that that is the case. But ultimately, we did have significant double-digit losses in the Group B side. What does that mean from an impact on the budget limit? So, it looks positive, but it's really the carry forward that's kind of setting us apart. So if you look at the top, the base support level is our main number, the main driver of that ADM. That is a loss that approaches $5.8 million. So we have lost $5.8 million in capacity. That is only offset by the fact that our carry forward from fiscal year 23 to 24 is $14 million greater than what we originally anticipated. So when you adopted a budget, we were estimating that we were going to carry forward $24 million. In the end, when you approved the AFR, we actually underspent our M&O budget to the tune of $38 million, so we're able to recoup $14 million in capacity. That helps us to certainly offset that $5.7 million loss. We also have a decline in the one-time state aid supplement. So originally we thought $13.1 million. That number is driven by our proportion of our total population to the proportion of the entire state's student population. So because we had a decline in the student population, we obviously have a decline in the one-time state aid supplement. It went from $13.1 to $10.7 million. In the end, because of the increase in the budget balance carry forward, we actually are increasing our M&O by $6 million. But really, it's offset by the losses of ADM. In the future, though, without a budget balance carry forward of this magnitude, we certainly would be expected to reduce our budget otherwise in M&O. The unrestricted capital outlay it's certainly a different story. With our loss of our students, we are going to have to reduce our capital outlay allocation by $367,000. Our budget balance carry forward, we originally estimated a $14 million carry forward. That estimate came in $9 million. So we will have to reduce our overall capital budget by $5 million. We have been able to target our contingency funds is one area that we will take those dollars from, and then we will look at unused capacity throughout our capital budgets. But our commitment is to continue to fund the priorities that you presented to you last spring in regards to adoptions, a lot of the construction projects that are currently underway. So we will look at areas of our capital budget that are not currently designated for projects in order to reduce those, in addition to our contingency account, where we will take approximately 60% of this from. This is just a kind of a high level of our revised operating budget. Overall, when you look at the various categories of funds from our adopted version to our revised version, we are reducing our budgets by about $3.4 million. FY24's revised right now stands at $742.2 million. This is a combination of all of our accounts, right? M&O is really the brunt of that. We are adding, obviously, to that in regards to budget balance carry forward. Same thing with the classroom site fund. There were additional carry forward dollars. That is not an increase in the allocation. It was just an increase in the fact that we have more carry forward from one year to the next to the tune of just under 1.9 million. And you can see the movements in the other funds as well. So what's on the horizon? Things that we need to be aware of. Obviously, like I mentioned, right now we have a projected 100th day enrollment. We will know by January exactly where we landed on the 100th day. There will be certain levels of movement at that point, but those projections will allow us to better develop the fiscal year 25 budget and how we redistribute resources to our schools. It goes without saying that state revenue decline, both income and sales tax, are pretty much at a deficit. The fiscal year 24 budget at the state level currently has a shortfall of $400 million. It is projected that the fiscal year 25 budget will have a $450 million shortfall. So the state is currently looking to balance its budget to the tune of over $800 million. We don't know how they will accomplish that, but I can certainly say that will have an impact on our ability to budget for next fiscal year. With the successful bond election, we are looking to have initial bond sales planned before the end of the current fiscal year. So we are talking to our bond advisors to try to figure out a plan to have bond sales initiated, hopefully between the months of April and May, so that we can actually get started on our bond projects before the summer starts, and we can start on our commitments to those. We are just waiting for our bond oversight committee to get put together in the early part of next spring. And then finally, just looming deadlines. ESSER will end here in about 10 months. The future of Prop 123 ends in about a year. The state legislature is looking at future uses of Prop 123. The state supplement of $300 million that was distributed is also ending in 7 months. And the building renewal grants that were expanded for the school facilities board across all school districts, we are actually looking at a potential reduction in July as it relates to the shortfall in the budget. So there may be fewer building renewal grants to go around statewide, even though the need essentially remains the same, not only for us, but for our peer school districts. And that is it. Any questions?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. And before I turn to my governing board colleagues for any questions, Dr. Trujillo, can you talk more kind of our plan? I know we're talking about this issue of our new budget because of some decreased enrollment, and we've had many conversations behind the scenes about some of the things that we're going to be looking at, consultants potentially, or some other things that we can do to start addressing some of this.
Yeah, the first thing we're doing is, I know that the ITS department, they're in the midst of putting together a departure analysis. So we'll be able to break down the different categories of departure from families that have left the district over the last 12 months, whether it's departure to a private school, departure to a charter, moving out of state, going to a sister traditional public school district, or even ESSA, taking an empowerment scholarship account. That's going to be the first step. And then we will be back probably discussing the opportunity to engage an outside consultant to engage with some of those families, to set up some structures, focus groups, interviews beyond a survey, actual face-to-face sit-down in terms of what the circumstances were from the departure of the district. From there, we're going to be in the best possible position to really craft and adjust the plan. I will say that, and I think we've had an opportunity to talk, the enrollment challenge is not just a recruit new students challenge. It's an actual retain the current students you have challenge, and a recruit new students to get them and capture the existing students that are coming up from grade levels 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, all the way up. So it is a three-headed challenge that you have to be very effective in all three areas. And that's not to say that a marketing campaign isn't important. It is, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the challenge isn't going to be solved by marketing alone. There's some real structural changes that we want to be able to discuss as a leadership team, and then also with our principals, that are going to happen with the registration process, also with the withdrawal process from the district. We're going to have to take a look at the work of our school community liaisons and the role that they play in being ambassadors at the local school level and welcoming families in, and then maybe looking at the enrollment ambassadors and getting them more active in FaceTime with families that are frustrated and leaving the district. And then, of course, marketing. Absolutely. I think that is definitely something that we're going to be looking at. But all of this, of course, starts with finding out where families went, getting a consultant involved at this point to be able to sit down with families in a more personal way beyond a survey or beyond just an email. And the reason that we're engaging in discussions about a possible third-party consultant coming in is what we've seen is that families might be a little less likely to give us that sort of really honest feedback as agents of the district they just left versus sitting down with a third party. So just a little bit more about what's coming down the pike with our enrollment challenge.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Any further questions or comments or feedback on tonight's topic? Ms. Shaw, go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Trujillo, is the consultant something that we will be voting on as a board?
Not tonight.
On the cost, we don't have any idea of what something like that would run, but obviously there are thresholds for a particular consultant that would require us to come back here for a vote. Absolutely.
Because the enrollment ambassadors, like an exit survey, is not in their scope of work.
The enrollment ambassadors, the bulk of their work is targeted towards what we term as front-end engagement. So they're ambassadors that engage with families. The bulk of their time is engaging with families at the point of enrollment, not the point of departure. So they're helping families get orientated in with bus schedules and free and reduced lunch. And so part of the conversation is going to be, is that actually where we need their energies, talents, and charm, or an influence, or would we need that more at the back end when folks are perhaps frustrated and ready to leave the district, and maybe pointing their efforts a little bit more in a structural way at providing face time for families that are considering withdrawing the district. So those are conversations that we're starting to have, because currently their function is predominantly more working with our families at the beginning of the registration process as opposed to when they're ready to withdraw and leave the district.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, because I think, I'd like to keep things in-house. As you mentioned, if most of their work is during the beginning of the year, I think maybe we can shift their job description. Because if I was upset with our district, I'd like to speak directly to, our people rather than some consulting company. But thank you.
Ms. Ekstrom.
Thank you. Are we seeing an enrollment decline throughout different schools, or is it clustered to one area? Do we know what that looks like?
We've seen mostly grade levels. And so for us, the surprise was kinder and 12th grade. Kinder and 12th grade usually are strong. They're strong brands for us, right? We have a really strong kinder program. We also have one of the district's largest pre-K operations, 60 or so sites around the district. So with fewer families choosing TUSD kindergarten, we have to take a deeper look at that. How much of that was impacted by empowerment scholarships, seeing families go elsewhere? How much of that was tied into the loss of ex-ed? We have to kind of take a deeper look. Seniors in high school are a different story, because typically we don't see really any losses at 12th grade, because by that point, you've rooted yourself in a high school community. You have a network of friends. You have an established ecosystem around you. You're familiar with your campus. By that point, you're involved in probably sports or music or art. That one is one we're really going to take a deep look at, is why the sudden the sudden increase in departures from the district at 12th grade. There are some suspects. Credit deficiency is one. Maybe an abnormally large segment of the 12th grade student body found themselves deficient with credit, weren't appropriately aware of all the different credit recovery opportunities here, might have gone to a charter just to get 1 year done to get graduated. Empowerment scholarship accounts, we have to take a look at that. Did that have an impact? So the work is being done right now to see what's behind the trends, what are some of the patterns that we've seen with these particular grade levels, specifically where they landed once we get our departure analysis report done.
And to add to that, there is an overall decline in the school age population across Pima County anyway, right? So which only exacerbates the grade level reductions, right? If we're essentially going after a smaller pool of students, all 17 school districts and the countless charter schools, we're all competing for the same kids. So it certainly highlights a bigger issue, behind what we need to do to make sure that we're, laser focused around some of these groups of kids, particularly kindergartners.
What I've been telling the team is, if it's a smaller pool, we have to make a bigger splash. That's the bottom line. We can't use that as an excuse. It just means that we have to demand more elbow space in the smaller pool. With school quality, a better academic product, safer schools, more modernized facilities, the bond is going to take care of that. And when we're looking at students leaving the district, we're looking at relationships that, for whatever reason, weren't strong enough to keep a family here. We have to answer that with relationships. We have to answer that with a process that builds in a requirement that you see somebody and that we have a conversation with you before you leave the district. Because in many situations, we may see that we can solve a problem that might keep a family in the district. Maybe it's a transportation problem. Maybe it's a change of course problem. Maybe it's a credit deficiency issue. So that one is definitely top of mind, that at that end point when there are families ready to leave the district, we have to take a deep look at the current withdrawal process right now and make sure that that becomes more of a person-to-person oriented experience for a family considering leaving. And we're going to have to flesh out what that looks like and look at existing job descriptions and positions and what that could possibly mean.
When will that come back to us as a report to see how we've tackled those issues?
We're probably going to be looking at late February, early March, by the time we kind of do the work that we just talked about in terms of seeing where everybody went, looking at potential with school community liaisons and enrollment ambassadors and some potential shifts in our marketing approach. I think one of the things that we saw during the bond campaign was their approach to reaching voters, and those strategies having the potential to be effective with kids and families that are in our zone. So we'll definitely be talking to those folks about the different platforms and strategies that actually proved to be pretty successful with our recent Proposition 496 victory, and how that could possibly be applied to reaching out to families that are in our attendance zone beyond just emails or flyers. I think what we saw in this campaign with the Get Out to Vote was taking our story to people's phones was effective. When every time somebody opened up a phone in our attendance zone within the boundary of TUSD, they saw our video about Proposition 496. They saw student faces, they saw parent testimonials. That proved to be pretty effective. And we haven't done anything like that. So I think that it's created the possibility of thinking dramatically differently about how we reach out to families, particularly those that are still in the mix looking for a school. We talk a lot about families that left. We talk a lot about families that are with us now and making sure that they come back. But there's a whole nother demographic of families that are just out there looking for a school. So we've got a lot of work to do on that end.
And I would recommend, I just out at my school visits, I was talking with one principal who says, it's great that we have these areas where we have, promotion of our different schools and they all come together in one place. But then we do have those families who cannot make it to those events. So maybe hosting more events at school, open houses, not just for families that are in the school, but for the neighborhoods, as a way to promote our schools. Because I really do believe that if you want to attend public school and TUSD is your district, you will find a right school for your student. I have seen that just by going out to all of my tours. And so I think just thinking outside the box a little bit, and maybe having, neighborhoods come into the schools to see what it's all about, because you really do need to get that feel of what the school environment is and and if it is right for your family.
Board Member Ekstrom, you're absolutely right. There's no reason why TUSD shouldn't make the biggest splash. When you think about the quality of our schools, especially those schools that are, have received the exceptional ratings, whether it's the Fruchtendlers or it's the Dodges, our beautiful schools like Banks and VC, we have beautiful facilities, exceptional programs that can go head to head with any charter, any private in the open enrollment environment. So there's some structural challenges that we have to address that are allowing families to withdraw from the district without digging too deeply. We can't just be silent while families are withdrawing without asking questions and making systemic attempts to find a way to keep them in the district. I think it's the withdrawal issue that's probably a little bit bigger than the recruitment. We do an actually pretty good job of recruiting and bringing families in. It's the keeping them, as we've seen with the enrollment data. Why are they leaving? Where are they going? What are the circumstances that are most prevalent in their departure? And let's find out what's going on. And then let's take a look at our structure. The structure that lets you go without anybody talking to you or asking any questions is very problematic. And that's probably priority one that needs to be addressed heading into the next school year.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Dr. Trujillo, could you talk a little bit about the enrollment process? Is it something you do on Parent View and you just click a button? And also for those parents who elect to receive an empowerment scholarship account, does that only count for one school year and after that they have to reapply? So if they do get one, can they come back after it's done?
So for the enrollment, I'll take that one, but Ricky is kind of all things ESSA, so I'll turn it over.
They have to reapply every year. They have to ensure that they're eligible every single year in order to maintain whatever scholarship they might be receiving through the Department of Education. Yeah.
So what we have to do with enrollment, so enrollment is it's paperless at this point. Obviously, extenuating circumstances, we still accept paper in all of our schools, but the predominant majority of enrollment is done through Parent View. To get a Parent View account, you have to be an enrolled student in the district. So members of the general public that are not yet activated with a Parent View account can actually go to the school website and just sign up via online enrollment, meaning they're in the queue to be enrolled in the school. And once they're enrolled, they do get that Parent View account. What we have to do is we have to create a systemic sense of urgency about enrolling those kids as fast as possible. Now, we understand there's staffing at play, and we understand that staffing issues drive a backlog of work. But what we have seen on the front end is if those online registration requests aren't processed as quickly as possible, there's 3 other schools or a couple of other districts that will take them. That's a problem. And that's something that we definitely need to get a little bit better at in terms of processing those requests for registration as quickly as possible. Because like Ricky said, you have 17 other districts, charters, and entities that are chasing the same students. So that structure, that process, it has to be overhauled. So we have to find a way to make it as immediate, as quick as possible. The other trend that we've seen with enrollment is sometimes in a lot of situations we deal with what's called placeholder enrollment, meaning I'm going to enroll in my local TUSD school across the street, but I'm going to get on a waiting list for a private. Okay. And if I'm never taken off that waiting list, I'm going to show up the first day of school, or the first 10 days of school go by, the private school that I'm on a waiting list now has room, I'm going to leave. So that's a population that we have to drill down and work harder to give a reason to stay. Those are a couple of the trends that we've identified early on, especially between day 1 and day 40, where we see kids leaving.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. So again, the item before us is the budget revision. Are there any other questions on this item tonight? Ms. Shaw, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to follow up with that. When I was enrolling my daughter, it was very difficult, and I could not do it on my phone. And so I don't know if that's like an issue with other people's phones or their carrier. But if we can make the enrollment process streamlined on cellular devices, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
It's difficult to do on a laptop as well, let alone a phone from a parent perspective. All right. So I'll move the item to approve the revised budget for the fiscal year 24.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed or abstentions? Item passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, Dr. Trujillo, we have item 6.2, School Council Authority to hold public meetings for our D-level schools.
Yes, I'd like to welcome to the podium our Director for Grant Federal Programs, and also one of our lead administrative leaders over the school improvement process and liaisons to the Arizona Department of Education for schools that are in the throes of school improvement. Talking about the statutory flexibility in this case that you have to actually delegate this particular charge to the local school site council. Mr. Lanza?
Great. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, President Shaw, governing board members, Superintendent Trujillo, and Council Ross. So we're going to be looking at school improvement plans and hearings and the requirements that are related to Arizona Revised Statute 15-241.02. So just a quick overview of that statute. It contains requirements related to letter grades. So our letter grades came out in November, and then we respond with following through meeting the requirements of this statute. It specifically has steps required of schools that receive a D or an F label. Currently, right now, TUSD has 9 D schools and 0 F schools. When we did this last year, I believe we had, at that point, 11 Ds and 1 F. So, we're trending in the right direction, but these are the 9 schools that we need to make sure we're hitting the requirements of this statute for. The schools are there on your right. There are 3 parts to this. So there is a notification component, an improvement plan component, and a public meeting component. The public meeting component is the one at the end that we are going to ask for a modification on. But just a quick overview, the notification is 30 days after receiving notification of the letter grades. We're required to provide written notification to each resident in the attendance area, explain the improvement plan process, and provide information about the public meeting. The improvement plan itself, we have 90 days after receiving notification of the letter grades to develop an improvement plan for the school and submit that to the superintendent of public instruction, both for Arizona and Pima County. And then the public meeting component, we are required to communicate about submitting 30 days after submitting the improvement plan. Governing board is required to hold a public meeting in each of the schools and present the improvement plan. That is the one, again, we'll be asking for a modification on tonight. More specific on the notification part of this requirement, the way we met this requirement is a letter on the school website and then also a public notice in the Tucson Weekly. The Tucson Weekly highlighted the success our schools had with letter grades, but also directed the attendance area folks to the school website to see if there was a letter explaining the D rating. There on the right-hand side is an example. That letter is found on the website of those 9 schools. The improvement plan process is something that we really are involved in all year. This isn't something new that the principals just have to develop. They will update their school's integrated action plan. That is something that they develop first in the spring for this school year, and that we update regularly through the school year. So they are updating that with new strategies that have been developed in response to the new letter grade, and then new information or strategies that will be added from letter grade plans. So this is always an ongoing process. Again, this isn't really a big surprise to principals. They're used to constantly having that as a living document through the year. The plans are submitted in the ADE grants management system to meet the submission requirements. So we're not actually physically taking the plans to the state superintendent of public instruction. They're in the system already. It's the updates that really meet this requirement. And lastly, the public meeting. This is the step that we're asking for a modification on. Principals, we're asking that the principals have the authority to review the improvement plans at their school council meeting. This will be done instead of the governing board having individual meetings at each of the 9 schools. That's, I mean, logistically really does not, is not feasible for you going to these 9 schools in that short time frame. The principals will present on 3 required items: the current year data, 3 primary needs that are part of their plan, and then relevant action steps for that current integrated action plan. So what we're asking for tonight is we're requesting that instead of holding separate governing board meetings at all 9 schools, that the governing board allow school councils to review the school improvement plan. And we've already, this plan is the same as we used last year. We have run this through the Arizona Department of Education. They've approved this plan. Their guidance was to follow direction from district legal team and the governing board. And again, this is the same plan that we used last year and presented, but we are asking for your approval on it again this year.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso. Governing board members, any questions, comments, feedback? Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Watson.
Hi.
Thank you. Do we know, since this was something, because I do remember you presenting this last year as well, is there any data on like how many, the schools that had to do this, how many parents attended those sessions?
I don't have the numbers with me, but they do have an agenda and have a sign-in, so that is information that we can gather.
Okay. I'd just be curious to see, because, you know, I will speak freely for a moment, that I realize it's a state statute, but I find this to be incredibly punitive, and I really dislike it. So, but I realize what the district has to do in terms of Band-Aids, because, you know, again, speaking freely, just because a school has a D doesn't mean that they're bad or what have you. And there's a lot of different circumstances, and I think it just negates and makes things really difficult and negative, and it's just another slap in the face of public education from the state. That being said, yeah, if you could, you know, just provide us with how that looks.
Sure.
Just, I'd like to know just to see if, you know, it's, I mean, even if one parent shows up, it's still one parent, and I want to see what the parent participation would be like.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Mr. Lanza, do schools that were F-rated in the previous school year and now are D schools have to create a brand new improvement plan, or can they like build upon the one from the previous year?
So they absolutely are building on the one from the previous year. They are tweaked through the year, really as they respond to benchmark data or letter grade data. They are updated, but so this is something that we have right now. We have 82 Title I schools that all have a plan like this. It's just that these are asked to specifically respond to letter grade of a D or an F. So yeah, you're correct. The F schools that increased to new letter grades this year, they're just updating what they've had in place.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
One request, whether it's the presentation from the meeting or the document for the school improvement plan, can you make sure those are the 9 schools are shared with the governing board?
We will.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
With these principals that are the school sites that are going to have to do this from a D, are we looking from guidance from principals that took their failing school to maybe like a B, like Safford did with Catherine Kuhn over there? I'm just seeing if we have systems that are working at other schools, can we apply at least some of these things? And I know every school has their own community and their own culture, things of that nature, but like what they did over at Safford was fantastic. And I think, as opposed to reinventing the wheel at each one of these things, maybe she can talk to these schools to let her know what she did, or any other schools that went from a failing grade to a higher grade.
We absolutely do have those systems and patterns that we've seen in those schools. And so we meet with these schools as part of the Title I process, but also just the broader school improvement process. I mean, there are core things that we know, that the CSP position at a school plays an important role, and there's a PLC process. Having all of those in place is just foundational, structural, really counted upon or guaranteed steps is some of the things that we look to get in place. These schools, when they do go into school improvement, whether with the state or the federal program, additional funding does come in at some level, and then that is where we're able to really tweak and add any gaps or missing components. But we do look at best practice. I mean, there's a lot of new school improvement literature that we're able to go into and really replicate, like you said, the things that we've seen work.
All right, I don't see any further questions. So I'll move the item to delegate school councils the authority to hold public meetings for D-rated schools in the 23-24 school year.
Second.
Okay, item is moved and seconded, moved by myself, seconded by Ms. Ekstrom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Item passes 5-0. All right, thank you,
Great.
Mr. Lanza.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, 6.3, TUSD Budget Advisory Committee membership recommendations. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Shaw, governing board members, I'd like to welcome the Budget Advisory Committee Chair, Taylor Pacheco, and standing by for any sort of, procedural questions. We also have our coordinator for governing board services to staff, Yolanda Borboa, who, of course, manages the logistics of the committee. And then, of course, our major representative is from the administration on the committee is our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ricky Hernandez, available for any questions on our end. I do, again, want to echo and reiterate that the board is not making any appointments this evening. They're here only to consider the approval of declaring 3 vacancies on the committee. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Pacheco.
Thank you. So we had come to you last meeting to discuss the attendance concerns that we had. At that last meeting, we had one member that had decided to resign before that meeting. And since then, between the time that I saw you last and today, we did have 2 additional members resign due to not being able to attend the meetings regularly. So at this point right now, we do have the 3 openings for people that would like to join us. And then we do have 1 additional member who has not attended and is over that attendance cap that's set in our charter. So just a reminder of what our charter says about the attendance here. The BAC may request that the TUSD governing board dismiss a committee member who has had 3 consecutive unexcused absences or a total of 5 absences in any 12-month period. Request to the governing board to dismiss require a majority vote of a committee where quorum is present. We did have quorum at our last BAC meeting, and we did vote to come to you guys with the recommendation to remove this one member. This member has not attended since December 14th of 2021 and has not responded to any calls or emails that we've sent.
Well, thank you, Ms. Pacheco, for being here again tonight and for representing the Budget Advisory Committee. I know this has been about 2.5 years into this committee now, and so, of course, in 2.5 years, to have some turnover is expected as people's lives change. Ms. Luna Rose, as our board liaison to the committee, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. And hi, thanks for coming. Other than the fact that what I said earlier after calling the audience, that there will be openings once we go through this. And to also thank those who are, that did step up and do this at the beginning. And for whatever reason, they just could not fulfill their mission, but they helped us get started. So I wanted to thank them for their service. And for those who are listening, please keep a lookout for when that will be open, and we will be happy to review your information and hopefully see some new faces on the Budget Advisory Committee.
And as I'll echo that, and for our listening audience, I've been a member of and then the board liaison to 3 of our wonderful TUSD committees, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is to make sure that we have folks from our community involved in those committees to really help engage our staff in conversation, work on really tough issues, and then make some really great recommendations to the board that we can act on, whether it's our existing committees that I have right now, the Budget Advisory Committee before us tonight, our Audit Committee, our Employees Benefit Trust, and of course the new committee, Alternative Education Committee, that we're trying to get off the ground. Am I forgetting a committee? Is that all of our committees right now? Bond Oversight. Oh, of course, yes, our newest committee as well, our Bond Oversight Committee, which will help us make sure that the bond funds are used most effectively to improve our schools. So please Google TUSD Governing Board. There's a whole section on committees in there that you can apply, and please join our committees. Ms. Luna Rose, would you like to make the motion to accept the resignation of the 3 members and the recommendation of the Budget Advisory Committee to remove another member?
Yes.
Okay. I'll second that motion.
All right.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Item passes 5-0. All right. Thank you, Ms. Pacheco.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is item 6.4, Governing Board Policy BEDH, Public Participation at Board Meetings, second read.
President Shaw, board members, I'd like to turn this item over to our general counsel, who will lead the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. I'll just kind of set this up procedurally, and then I'm sure the board will have a healthy discussion as it did before. So October 24th was the first read of proposed policy revision for BEDH. The board, after discussion, voted to post a version of revision for public comment, and that is on the agenda marked as the revised version, and that's with markup, and then there's a clean version of that as well. It has been out for public comment. 3 comments were received. They're there on the agenda item for your consideration. In addition to any other comments you might have received from the community, those are the ones that came through the website. And so those are on the agenda item as well. Today, you're here for a second read. And of course, the board can do what it wishes with the policy, make further revisions, or take other action or no action.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Governing Board members. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I know I expressed this opinion in the October meeting when this was brought to the board, but I feel like taking away the written method of call to the audience is really going to create barriers to the public and speaking directly to the board. And after that meeting, several people reached out to me with those same concerns, expressing that they were immunocompromised, and some just couldn't make it to the meetings. And so I would like to amend the policy making a motion to reinstate the written method to address the board, basically just taking out the redlined or the crossed out area of this policy and reinstating it, that one paragraph.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
That is a motion.
It was a motion.
Right, so I'm not seeing a second on that motion. We can continue discussion at this point to kind of see where we want to land as a policy. Ms. Luna Rose.
Sorry, thought that was on. And Ms. Shaw, I do agree with you, and now listening to, and I'm sorry, ma'am, I forgot your name, that Ms. Spicer? No.
Cummings.
Ms. Cummings, okay. I read everybody's names now, so my apologies. To Dr. Shaw, to make the consideration that if we're going to keep written comments to allow for the disability community to more accessibility, there's a lot of movement in making things more accessible, and I think sometimes perhaps I've been a little short-sighted on that and not thinking that through. And perhaps just keeping it as is. And Ms. Shaw, I did not second yours just for the fact that I don't think we need personally a hotline. I think that could be eliminated. One, seeing the comments, and two, I did do a little research, and the city of Tucson does not have any sort of written comment. So maybe we could be a leader and encourage them to allow that. I'm sure our friends there might not like me saying that, but and at the county, they do have a call-in line during the actual call of the audience. But I think that also bogs that down. So I think in order to keep it a happy medium, if we were to do anything just to keep policy as is.
So no action tonight goes back to the policy as is. So we have a second read right now with some revisions. If we do not adopt the revisions, we go back to the policy as written with everything back to where it was on October 28th. Mr. Romero.
Could we do something where we have like a Zoom type of option and be able to utilize that as we've done in the past in a lot of different meetings?
Mr. Dr. Trio.
Yeah, Board Clerk Romero, as part of this item, our team is prepared to demonstrate Zoom capabilities depending on the will of the board. So we have prepared, I know the original discussion from the October meeting was that the word hotline be used and that we maybe set up some access via phone to address the board, because we had doubts about Zoom capabilities versus telephonic capabilities. We have since clarified with Zoom and are actually pretty comfortable with Zoom's capabilities, which is why we're prepared to do a demo tonight, be it the will of the board if we're at that point prior to a vote.
Would that be similar to how we do the Pledge of Allegiance and
yes,
land acknowledgement statement with the kids coming on Zoom?
Yes, and in fact, if Gene, if you would like to take the lead here, just give them a quick view.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, governing board members, President Shaw. The Zoom webinar format, which we currently use, allows for panelists, which are those people who've joined the meeting, such as the students who read the land acknowledgement statement and lead us in the pledge. But it's like a seminar where you would have people behind a panel, and then you'd invite members of the public to be the audience. And those people are called attendees. The attendees remain silent and cannot contribute until we promote them to a panelist. So a potential person who wants to comment during the call of the audience could be invited as an attendee, and then we would promote them to a panelist, as you see me doing. And Kevin Asher from our communications department could now comment as part of the call to the audience. And when he's finished, I would then remove him as a panelist, and he'd go back to being an attendee, observing in silence. Kevin, are you there?
Yes, I am. I can hear you guys just great.
So he would offer his comments at this time. After 3 minutes, we'd remove him as a panelist, and he'd become an attendee again. And then we would remove him as an attendee as well, so they're not just sitting there for the rest of the meeting. And we have 2 others who are attendees. Norma Gonzalez, also from the Communications Department, who I'm promoting to panelist. It takes a moment. It's a little bit clunky, but Norma, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So she could be commenting too, but by this time I would have removed Kevin.
And a quick note, I'm actually joining from my phone, not a laptop.
There you go.
Dr. Shaw?
Who was that?
Me.
Ms. Shaw, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. And thanks, Jean, for this little example of what may happen. For those folks who would possibly be zooming in to the call to the audience, would they have the ability to go like show their video, or is that function going to be disabled?
That would be at the discretion of the board. It's not a decision that I would make. It is possible for them to share their screen, but I believe that that would be unfair to those who appear in public, in person.
Right.
But I'm not paid for my opinion.
I agree. Not about that, but about your opinion on that. So I saw though that before you like allowed them to be panelists, like you could allow them to talk. So maybe that's a way that we can rectify that.
This is true. We could for Bianca Vega, also from the Communications Department, we can simply click allow to talk, and then she can speak as an attendee without even being promoted to a panelist. I don't think that her video is available at this point.
Okay, great.
Hi, Bianca.
Hi, all. How are you?
There she is. And I don't believe that even if she tried to turn on her video, it would work at this point. She'd have to be promoted to a panelist.
Yeah, I don't have an option for a video.
Oh, cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Romero.
So, kind of moving along with technology, obviously we've heard a lot of people that still want to write in for certain situations. I think maybe considering Zoom as an option, and in that last case, if they can't do something like that, we do still have that write-in option. But I think, someone mentioned we have that technology to maybe become leaders, like City Council's not doing, and Pima County's just doing call-ins. Maybe we have something new and we're part of the technology and still allow paper for those that need it.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Romero. I don't think we have to do things the way that the City of Tucson or the Board of Supervisors does things. I think we can be innovative, and we can be innovative by allowing folks to Zoom in. But we should not go back in time and take away this method of speaking to the board. It's an accessibility issue, and I really cannot believe that my motion died for lack of a second because we didn't want to keep this one paragraph. I'm not sure if my motion was understood. I just wanted to reinstate that's one paragraph that we see on the screen here that says that folks can write in and have their comments read to us. I think, adding in the hotline is a fabulous idea. I don't foresee any trouble that we're gonna get. Dr. Trujillo.
Dr. Trujillo.
As the board continues its conversation around written comments, the administration's only going to weigh in that should the board consider the portion of the revision that references a hotline, if it's going to consider that, we would request to replace the word hotline with via video conferencing. We don't also want to mention Zoom because we don't want to be endorsing a brand. So that we would just ask the board to consider, take out hotline, put video conferencing.
Ms. Shaw.
Could we, if we're like moving to do that, should we, instead of video, since we hopefully won't have the video option available, do like audio conferencing? Would that be like more to what we're doing?
I'm just referencing the specific platform that in general, whether it's FaceTime or Zoom, just, video conferencing, but, the video function, that'll be the decision of the board, which I think was your original question. Wasn't, as I understood it, wasn't about sharing a screen, but was simply turning on your camera, right, when you address. And I think, Jean, from a security perspective, as our Zoom administrator, you would be able to remove somebody pretty quickly if there was the usage of profanity or there was some off-color commentary that violated our policy around non-discrimination.
That is correct, Dr. Trujillo. It's possible to remove them within seconds.
So I'll say a few things. So, I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate everyone who came in with the comments here tonight. So the call to the audience is something that we have as a governing board. That's not in state statute. It's not required for us to do. It's something that we've done historically and traditionally over the decades to make sure that there is a forum for people from our community to address what's going on in our district. We have a lot of ways for people to communicate with us, and all of our emails are on the main website. If there are any written comments, I check my email before the meetings to make sure there isn't anything relevant to the meeting agenda items, which I'm sure many of you do. I respond to, I think, almost every email I've received in the last 3 years from community members on any issue from hedges in a corner of a schoolyard to compensation and other issues that come up. And to have written comments at the board meeting read by one of our staff members, to address us, that's not really the purpose. It's really to address the public. And there's a lot of ways for people to address the public. If they have written comments, they can do a letter to the editor, to the Daily Star. There's a lot of different forums out there for folks. And I think going back to the traditional call to the audience where people come here is what I would support tonight. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Gosh. There was already like a write-up in the Arizona Daily Star about this. This effort to censor call to the audience. I don't think it's a good look on us. And frankly, since becoming a governing board member for TUSD, I think this may be like the third or fourth time that we've attempted to modify our call to the audience policy. I don't think that we should value one method of speaking to the board over others, and the public shouldn't have to like trudge down here to get their voices heard. The Arizona Daily Star doesn't select every letter that's submitted to them, and I think this is what we were duly elected to do. To hear the public and to, take action based off of what we see and hear around the district. And so I'm going to make one more motion to reinstate the paragraph that reads, submissions must indicate whether the individual desires to address the board in person or to submit their comments in writing to be read into the record by a board designated TUSD employee during the call to the audience portion of the board meeting. All written comments will be distributed to board members regardless of whether they have been read into the record.
Okay, so I don't hear a second, and I will add that and the language is important, and I think it's a very unfair characterization to call anybody was trying to censor anything. I think limiting call to the audience to the intended purpose, or we're not censoring call to the audience. Everyone's able to come here, so I think that's a really unfair characterization.
If I may, I don't think it's unfair. If you watch the October meeting, we, put it on Ms. Barboa that, they were having problems, when there were some heated letters. It was unfair for one of our staff members to read things that were, I guess, in some people's eyes, just not something that they wanted to hear. And so, it has been addressed in that manner, and it is censorship. And I value public opinion and will continue to defend the rights of people to speak at public meetings. And it's a shameful thing that we're trying to take this away from the public.
Dr.
Ms.
Shaw.
Luna Rose.
Ms. Shaw, we're not taking anything away from the public in terms of they can email us at any time. I just want to make that clarification. They can email us at any time. If, as Dr. Shaw said previously, if this is a second read, so we could make action on it tonight, correct, Mr. Ross? Or we can bring it back, or no? This is where I get a little...
This is a second read, so it's already gone through a first read process.
First read, okay. Okay. So I think we're not curtailing, and yes, we'd be going back to what has been done in the past. And the reason why we started doing written, or the district started doing written comments because of COVID. So, but it seems like, there's a contingency that I would really hate for them to miss out. I'm not in favor, truthfully, of the Zoom. I think that would bog us down and call the audience in terms of getting as many people as possible to want to comment. So if we don't make any changes, this would just revert to what we currently have on policy, right?
Correct. That's correct, which includes the written comments.
Okay.
So the current policy is written comments. No
Right.
action means that continues.
Okay. So I don't really foresee a need of a motion because it would just revert back. So, but I just wanted to make that comment. I don't believe that Dr. Shaw or anybody else on the board that perhaps is trying to think if they're going to vote for this, or which way they're going to vote, is trying to curtail or censor anybody. So I do I do have an issue with that.
So I will make a motion to adopt the policy revisions on this document with everything in red, including the items that are not struck out.
I have a question.
Can you say that again?
Sure, the motion is to adopt this policy with everything that's in red, including the new items struck out. And the items that are already struck out in red continue to be struck out. So going to just in-person comments.
So deleting the written comments, is that my
Correct.
understanding?
Right, so that motion dies for lack of second as well. Mr. Romero.
So I think what Ms. Shaw has kind of mentioned, the public can email us, but it's not put in public record. And so they're not, yes, we're seeing it, but not the general public is seeing that. So I think that's why that's kind of coming into the freedom of your opinion and speaking out to the board. And again, like with you, I'm not about suppressing people's voices. I encourage that. I think for me, the having that as an option, again, there's been a lot of people that have reached out that will still want it in writing. I'm I'm a big paper person for the most part. I always bring in my file. But, I think we can get more engagement by doing hotline or, like I said, or Dr. Trujillo said, via video broadcasting. I think that we can get more people doing it that way also. But again, I guess I'm possibly leading that maybe this just fails and we keep it as is.
That's what it's looking like tonight. So for sake of time, unless someone has another motion, I'm going to move us on.
Well, I would like to remove the where Ms. Barboa is reading the call to the audience. I do not think that we need to put that on a staff member. And that's not censorship. It's just it's not what she's here for. And so I would recommend that we have our clerk read the comments.
Did you want to make a motion?
So I move to keep the policy as is and to have our clerk read the written comments to the board.
And Ms. Ekstrom, a point of clarification, is that as is including the hotline option?
No hotline.
So going back to the original policy with
Original
the one revision
policy.
being the clerk reads the comments
Correct.
instead of a staff member.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Item passes 5-0. Are there any other motions on this item? All right, seeing none, we're going to move us on to our study action items. Dr. Trujillo, we have one study action item, 7.1, approval for contracted vendor services for temporary coverage of hard-to-fill teaching vacancies. Sorry, I keep on looking at the rest of the governing board. I didn't even notice that you're not there.
Yes, President Shaw, members of the governing board, kind of going back to an earlier item on the agenda when we talked about schools and school improvement. What we know is a predominant characteristic of the schools that continue on in school improvement, those specifically that are rated as D schools, they're predominantly disproportionately affected by staffing shortages, which has contributed to the challenges that they see right now academically. Right now in the 9 remaining D schools, and I do want to take this time to publicly celebrate Catalina, which was recently promoted from D to C on an appeal. So I do want to congratulate that community. But be that as it may, we have 9 remaining D schools in the district. Throughout the 9 remaining D schools, we have 7 teaching vacancies in pretty much all tested grade levels for the Arizona Academic Skills Assessment, which will be facilitated in April and will determine letter grades and student achievement for the district for the upcoming school year. Currently, these 7 vacancies don't have a highly qualified permanent teacher, and we're concerned. And we've made a lot of attempts to try to secure permanent coverage, really to no success. So we're here tonight asking for some governing board support for a contracted vendor in order to be able to place some highly qualified teachers into these classrooms. So with the details, I want to turn it over to our Chief Human Capital Officer, Mr. John Fernandez.
All right, good evening, board members. And as you know, as Dr. Trujillo said, we continue to work throughout the year to hire and recruit for classroom teaching positions in all of our schools. But of course, we have particular concerns about finding ways to fill the classroom vacancies in schools that are working hard to accelerate this school improvement. And so as Dr. Trujillo mentioned, we are looking at the 9 schools that currently have a D rating, and we've been monitoring their vacant positions, especially at tested grade levels, grades 3 to 8. He mentioned 7. That number kind of fluctuates. We actually are at 8 now. However, what we're asking of the board today is to give us the narrow authorization to work with these schools and with Maxim Staffing Services to hire contract teachers to fill these critical vacancies next semester. There is sufficient budget capacity based on the budgets assigned to these vacancies to accomplish this. We estimate those costs to be about $313,200 to support this effort next semester. And we would need your approval to exceed the contract spending capacity that's currently in place by $500,000 to allow us the sufficient authority to cover this amount and pay for these services. The schools that we would be looking to fill vacancies in are Cavett, Erickson, Hollinger with 3 positions, Palo Verde with 2, and Pueblo Gardens with 1. So with that, we ask you for your consideration and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Governing board members, any questions, comments, feedback on this item? So seeing none, I'll just add, no, this is not ideal, of course. We want to make sure we have our own certified teachers from TUSD in these positions. We also know that for these schools to really hit their targets and goals under school improvement, not having substitutes to change on a daily basis, or even someone who's not committed to the classroom on a regular basis is not in the best interest of those schools as well. And so this is we're just approving this for 1 year to get us to the end of the academic year. Is that correct?
And this will be for the next semester.
Yeah.
And so the amount being requested is really to cover the estimated costs for those employees.
Yeah. So hopefully that we can get a permanent teacher in place for this semester to help those kids on their learning and growth and trajectory.
Correct.
So I'll move the item. Item moved by myself and seconded by Ms. Luna Rose. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Item passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, and last is future meeting dates and agenda items. Dr. Trujillo.
President Shaw, at least for one more meeting, right, until we come back in January. We will be back in January, and obviously the feature item in January will be the governing board's reorganization, where the board will elect its leadership team, its officers for the upcoming year. The 2 meetings in January are going to feature board consideration of mid-year compensation, a consideration of some staffing ratio adjustments in key areas that I know that our employee community has been waiting for in terms of monitors, custodians. It will also feature the formal recommendation from the administration with regards to a benefits package for medical and pharmaceutical for employees for the upcoming year. So it's going to be a busy January.
Thank you, Dr. True. And before I close the meeting, I do want to have to take a point of personal privilege as my last meeting as president of our governing board. This day has been a real honor and privilege to serve in this role this past year. I think we've had a really momentous year, from everything from revising our code of conduct to, of course, going out to our bond, to addressing compensation and benefits for our employees, and so many other issues that have been really pivotal for our district. I want to thank my colleagues on the governing board for your support this year as president, and for Dr. Trujillo, Mr. Ross, and the rest of our administrative leadership team, and of course Ms. Borboa and our administrative staff, and Ms. Hernandez and others for all their support this year. I think it's been a very, very successful, transformational year for our district, and I hope the district benefits from the work that we've been able to do together over this past year. So thank you very much for this opportunity to serve. All right, and for that, I'll close our meeting tonight. Thank you.
Have a great holiday season.
Yes, you too. Hi, good to see you. Good to see you, Jerry.
How you doing, Jerry? Good to see you.
This is smoking.
Yes, sir.
Except for that week.